Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Blaze the Cat here, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game for the Nintendo GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox, not PC, and not Game Boy Advance. So, last time, we've essentially did manage able to experience not one, but two levels, or technically three levels I should say, because we did somehow manage able to experience the forms of, well, let's just say, bubble blowing baby hunt, even though we are basically almost completely done everything in that particular level. In addition to that, we also did manage able to went into yet another level, which appears to be a yet another driving level, and that's what appears to be no weenie parking anytime. So, and on top of that, we also did manage able to deal with the very first boss in the game, faced up against with the forms of the frogfish. So, despite the fact I accidentally died at first, but relatively speaking though, it was actually really easy, especially considering for the fact that despite the fact that there's no you know what I mean, there's no checkpoints every time you move on to the next phase of a fight, so that must have been something. So today, for this video, if you couldn't tell already, we've decided able to actually go back onto the previous levels again, just to ensure for the fact that if we do ended up missing the forms of certain treasure chests for some extras, in addition to that though, with some more goofy tokens we do need to get for not only for driving levels, but as well as the forms of some slide levels as well, just to ensure for the fact that we do need to collect more of those goofy tokens until we've decided able to learn the next move until specifically in a later stage after, you know, the rock slide. So because of this though, so for now on though, we need to go back into I am ready depression stage, and generally speaking though, there was technically two treasure chests I did somehow accidentally ignored throughout the majority of the playthrough so far. So generally speaking now, all we have to do for the first chest anyway, we need to go ahead and try to do this particular cartwheel spin, and as a result you have to break all those crates all in one particular go, and once you've done so already, and that way you can get yourselves the first treasure chest in I Am Ready Depression. So either way, so that pretty much leads us to 6 treasure chests, if I recall that correctly. Well, mind you about the fact that, like I stated before, it's been about 2 days ago since I actually have last played this game for sure, and generally speaking though, so far anyway, that Silver the Hedgehog has recently finished up the very first world in Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance, which appears to be Gangplank Galleon. So generally speaking though, he's now moved on to Crocodile Cauldron World, so usually involves around lava and you need the rest. So anyway, and yeah, a few things I want to talk about is before we get onto the forms of some discussions alike. Well, for instance though, it's about the fact that, well, obviously if you couldn't tell today, it's about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 8th of November today, in some cases in 2024 today. So, remember how the fact that Silver has already mentioned about this before, that obviously ever since yesterday, Mario Luigi Brothership has recently came out just yesterday for the Nintendo Switch, or should I say the final genuine Nintendo Switch game to be released for 2024 as a matter of fact. So generally speaking though, for what I've experienced that game on my spare own time, I'm having a lot of fun with the game though, although it does take me quite a while to get used to with some new mechanics as be expected, but I'm having a lot of fun with it so far, especially concerning for unlike some reviewer out there, which I suppose I should probably get the elephant in the room. And simply put, it's about the fact that, unfortunately though, IGN is at it yet again when it comes to negativity with certain reviews alike, which clearly doesn't make that much sense to me, especially it's bad enough about the fact that he also did that for the likes of one of those films that came out during that time, which appears to be Transformers 1. So generally speaking though, yeah, I'm basically just done with the forms of IGN at this point. When it comes to review scores alike, especially it's bad enough about the fact that we've been waiting for years for the new Mario Luigi game to finally came out on a different system, which is of course the Nintendo Switch. So generally speaking though, I have no words. So anyway though, also as far as I'm aware about the fact that there are some questionable stuff here and there, in regards to the forms of anything else potentially, but let's not get ahead of ourselves at this point right now, because let's head back into the first driving level again, except this time with a different objective.
Do you want to try a time challenge?
I'm challenged all the time.
Good one, buddy.
Yeah. Wait, what?
You'll have a set time limit to get to the end of the road. If you finish in less than the set time, I'll reward you.
Okay, so here's one of the first additional challenges we can able to participate, and that's what appears to be the time challenge, where basically in this particular mission right here, that could be also applied for other levels as well, ranging from the sliding levels and some more driving levels, potentially speaking now, that we need to beat a certain amount of time, and then once you've done so, then you would able to actually get yourselves a nice glorious reward, which is of course the Goofy Goofer token. So generally speaking now, for the most part, this stage is actually not too bad. In regards to the forms to try to tackle for those additional challenges. However, as the game goes on, the game gets much more difficult, to the point where the fact that the entire challenge is going to be virtually impossible to complete sometimes. Assuming, of course, if you pretty much know what to do, in terms of the forms of the driving physics with the paddy wagon. So, and you see what I mean if we get on to the later stages to come. I mean, for the most part though, the only real hazards you definitely need to worry about is, of course, every time you drive into water, basically though, your controls will be a lot slipperier. So generally speaking, now that's the only thing we do need to worry about. And by the way, there's that treasure chest right there that we somehow ignored from earlier. So that way, we are now on to, I would say, 10 treasures, if I can recall that correctly. So generally speaking now, again, I need to able to actually look up on things before I do my recording sessions on this, for the time being, so just in case I don't want to able to miss out on things. Although, there was actually yet another SpongeBob game. I was very curious to check it out at some point in the future. That's what appears to be the SpongeBob SquarePants Truthful Square game that I did manage to able to came out on only 4 platforms in generally. Like, for instance, there's the DS version, and there's also the Wii version, the PSP version, strangely enough, and finally the Xbox 360 version, which obviously though is about the fact that on the Wii version it does manage to have the Wii Motion Plus peripheral support. Well, let's just say it only exists on 2-player mode for some unknown reasons. Well, usually relatively speaking, I was about the fact that the only playable character you're only going to be playing as in that game, which is of course SpongeBob himself. And as a matter of fact though, it's about the fact that one of the, well, I would say it's probably the worst SpongeBob special episodes has been officially became 15 years old during that time, since 2009, for I've heard anyway. At least that Knuckles or Sonic have both mentioned to me about this ever since in around a couple of days ago actually, after we've decided able to rewatch the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, the first one anyway, just while looking back on it though. And yeah, they did tell me for the fact that the Truthful Square special is not that very good, especially considering for the fact that, well, the only thing I'll give the actual special some credit for is that was one of the first ever episodes, technically speaking, to able to support widescreen, which is kind of interesting to say the least. Well, usually at the same time though, it's about the fact that, well, it's hard for me to explain because it's been a very long time since I actually seen that special, so...
You've won the time challenge. Here's your reward.
Thanks, Mindy. And that doesn't stop there because, well, let's just say we'll get on to the forms of the third challenge, which is going to be an entirely different objective.
Now I have a real challenge for you.
Mindy, we're ready. What do we do?
Rings will appear on the road. Go through each ring before it disappears. If you get through them all, I'll reward you.
Oh boy, this challenge sounds familiar to you, doesn't it? Well, if you ever experienced not only Superman 64 for the Nintendo 64, alongside with some missions in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, we are simply going through rings. So, yeah, that does sound familiar, doesn't it? However though, here's the thing though, is that similar to the forms of how it does it in Superman 64, basically though, if you dare miss one of those rings, and if you manage to let the actual ring go disappear, you have to restart the entire mission all over again. again. So, but at least thankfully though, we are not playing Superman 64 or anything, because my goodness, if we somehow played that torturous game, my god, we'll be brainwashed by then. And I've heard a lot of bad thoughts about it, especially concerning for the fact that it's definitely one of the worst Nintendo 64 games that's ever conceived, and I highly doubt it will not be available for the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, because obviously though that game does not receive very well in terms of, you know, reviews and all that jazz. So, but that'll be a topic for a later time, I guess. So anyway, there's also another thing that's worth mentioning for, actually, is about the fact that, I do somehow manage able to realize about the fact that there was actually another one of those games in particular has recently confirmed, well, specifically the DLC, as far as I'm aware. The game is actually by the fonts of River City Girls 2, that does manage to feature Double Dragon crossover, or something like that. Well, that particular DLC is going to be releasing until around 4 days time now, in just around the exact same time as in the Disney Plus release of Deadpool and Wolverine, and that's so much so for the fact that it's going to be due out at some point on the 12th of November. So, and conveniently enough though, it's about the fact that there's also another things worth mentioning for, at least if I was assuming so anyway though, that's this. Basically though, it's about the fact that apparently though, that when it comes to able to actually mention about something relates to Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, as I explained this ever since around 2 days ago, well, it may look like about the fact that compared to the fonts of how it does it in the original GameCube version, which did manage to able to only sold for about 1.91 million copies sold on the GameCube version, whilst now on the Switch remake it now sells even more. Well, only for a little bit, so as a result though, it did somehow manage to able to sell for about, you know, as I stated before, since on Wednesday, which is of course 1.94 million copies sold. So generally speaking though, unlike in Super Paper Mario though, that it still does very well back then, especially concerning for the fact that that game came out on the Nintendo Wii, and alongside with that there was also Paper Mario The Origami King, which is the most original release of the forms of the Paper Mario game for the Nintendo Switch during that time. But either way though, that'll be a topic for a later time, because as you can tell, so far we're actually doing not too shabby around here, until later on that again, certain challenges are pretty easy for the most part. However, there are certain challenges though are gonna get much tougher than you might as well expect. So either way.
You've beaten the ring challenge.
Alright, so we got ourselves yet another Goofy Goofer token, and generally speaking out, there's only one mission left, and this is gonna be quite of a challenge.
Since you beat the other challenges so easily, I have a tough one for you.
Easy? Yeah, it was easy.
Oh, very easy.
Alright, I'll give you a hard time to beat. Get to the end of the road in less than the set time.
Okay, so here we go on to, if I would like to call it, the micro time challenge, where basically though, think of like the time challenge as we've already done for before, except it's going to be much harder. So this means about the fact that I highly suggest you're able to save the actual Turbo Boost item as wisely as you can. So just to ensure for the fact that if you waste too much boost, then obviously though you're probably not going to pass this particular mission. So, but regardless of such though, like I said this before, is that sandwich driving 101 stage is overall pretty self-explanatory, especially if you know any other shortcuts or alternative paths, then you should feel right at home, especially concerning for the fact that after all, we've already claimed all 3 of those treasure chests, so generally speaking, we pretty much know the level inside out. However though, until, you know, the game progresses onwards, basically though, it gets ridiculously challenging. Although, there might be some specific gimmicks that we have to utilize with in regards to the forms of trying to go through driving levels. Well, that'll be a topic for later days to come, especially concerning for the fact that at this point in time, that I get the strong sense of feeling about the fact that specifically until this weekend, it may look like that Sonic will did indeed manage able to try to finishing up every single aspect in terms of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version, just before we move on to the forms of the next bunch of Sonic games that we did definitely need to do a Let's Play of, just before we dive into our redo Let's Play of Sonic Mania, and even some brand new Let's Plays for the time, which appears to be, of course, Sonic Sonic X Shadow Generations, and Sonic Superstars, and much more, until possibly if Sega decides to able to actually announce yet another Sonic game in the future. Well, presumably speaking though, until God knows when exactly, just because we are still waiting for Switch successor as far as anything else goes, aside from the fact that we've already heard about the fact that obviously backwards compatibility has been officially been confirmed, so that's good all in all, especially concerning for the fact that it will be amazing if how The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom will run 60 frames per second on the Switch successor, which I'm really hoping that'll be the case, because otherwise it'll be entirely a smooth experience, all things considered. So either way though, yeah, everything else will become to expect basically. So as far as I'm aware, the target time, as you can see, is actually a lot different this time. Like basically though, we need to beat for about under 3 minutes, because if you don't manage to beat it in time, obviously though there aren't any checkpoints around here, so we have to do this in one singular run through. So all in all, not too shabby for this stage in general, so just to ensure for the fact that we have to get used to with the driving mechanics and how the handling works, and overall we have basically done everything in this stage.
You did it!
Alright, but if you think we are done here, well, there is technically yet another challenge. However though, it is entirely optional. You get nothing rewarding.
You can try and beat your best time on this road.
We'll do it, Mindy. Nothing can distract us.
Wheels on the paddy wagon go round and round.
So yeah, basically what Mindy is trying to tell us is about the fact that we can able to actually beat our personal time, but like I stated before, this part is entirely optional, and as a result though, it's nothing that rewarding if you're trying to accomplish something like this. So I think suffice to say, we should probably move along now, and suffice to say, let's go ahead and do the let me think around here. Actually, no matter what though, let's go on to the one of the slide levels, so just to ensure we can able to tackle through let's just say similar challenges as from before in Sandwich Driving 101. So generally speaking, that was about the fact that in regards to the forms of slide missions, well,
You guys took a while going down the slide the last time.
I like to stop and smell the anemones.
And old tires.
Well, try sliding quickly instead. If you make it under the allotted time, you'll earn a reward.
And it's a good thing we somehow come back into this level anyway, because what I recall is that, although technically we've already did manage to able to claim ourselves the very first treasure chest in this particular stage, however, we're somehow missing 2 others, so hopefully we should be able to claim those just before we move along to the next slide level, which is of course Rock Slide. So anyway though, yeah, there's nothing else I can really talk about, I'm afraid, guys. Well, apart from the fact that, well, like I said this before, is about the fact that in regards to the forms of, you know, comparing the forms of other Paper Mario games sales-wise, is that obviously though, if I've compared, that obviously though, Super Paper Mario has still pretty much received the best selling entry of the entire series of the Paper Mario games. Usually it gets like over 4 million units. And meanwhile, in regards to the forms of the Origami King, it was still at 3.47 million copies sold. And then on the subject, there's the worst Paper Mario games ever made, which appears to be Sticker Star, and that game did sell for about 2.49 million copies sold. And then on the subject, there's the Paper Mario game, the one that started it all on the Nintendo 64, which does manage to able to do decently well within 1.37 million copies sold, despite the fact that that game came out in a late N64 life cycle just before we move on to the Nintendo GameCube. And finally though, the worst selling Paper Mario games of all time though, which appears to be on the Wii U of all things, because you know, the Wii U does not sell very well, probably just because about the fact that not only for its marketing, but also commercial wise is a miserable flop. And generally speaking though, it only receives for about, let's just say, technically 870,000 copies or anything else like that. So at least I get the math for this point. So yeah, at the very least though, that's as far as we can able to talk about Paper Mario from now on, until we probably decided able to think about trying to do the rest of the Paper Mario games, apart from one exception, which is, of course, the worst entry in the series, which is, of course, Sticker Star, just because, my god, while looking back on it though, it plays stupidly unbalanced, and you name the rest. It's even bad enough about the fact that that game is going to be 12 years old until on Monday, the 11th of November of all things, specifically in North America, because we didn't receive the game until about a month later in December for its holiday season or something, for whatever reason. So anyway though, so let's just go ahead and focus on this from now on. So just to ensure for the fact that we can able to jump over large leaps of faith, and generally speaking luckily we've already did manage able to claim that particular treasure chest familiar on the first run anyway. And again, in order able to complete those time challenges, including the micro time challenge, you have to specifically try to take the alternative routes, or specifically some dangerous shortcuts. You have to able to try to pull this off, because if you don't, then chances are though there's going to be a lot of trial and error. But thankfully though, unlike in certain other games, like for instance though, I can't remember what game I was going to be thinking about anyway. That's basically though, this game has unlimited amount of lives.
Here's your reward as promised.
Well, thanks Mindy again, and generally speaking we can now move on to the next mission, which is going to be the ring challenge. Although if I failed on this, I might come back for that in the next time.
I've got a real challenge for you two.
Whoa, three-legged race?
Spelling shuffleboard backwards?
No, rings will appear along this slide. You have a limited time to get through each ring. I'll reward you if you get through every ring.
Oh boy, and believe me what I'm saying is about the fact that in regards to the forms of the ring challenges on these slide stages, well, here's the thing though, you can't go back, so you have to able to continuously going forward. You know, think of like the forms of, you know, trying to go through on rails, you know, mark speed sections from Sonic 06, and generally speaking, you get the gist of it. So, and also I just realized that we somehow level up too, so either way though. But again, if I do mess up at one point in this particular challenge, then like I said before, that I can easily go back onto any other stages at any time, whatever I wish. So generally speaking, unlike the forms of how it does it on other games, oh no, I missed that ring! And it's even bad enough I missed that treasure as well. So generally speaking yeah, there's going to be a lot of memorization at one point when it comes to the ring challenge. So I'm afraid to tell you that trying to complete everything on that particular level will not happen until for later time, because generally speaking I do need to get a lot of memorization, you know. But anyways, let's go into the forms of the rock slide instead.
Slide to the bottom of the trench as quickly as possible.
But again, unlike the movie though, where basically though, when both SpongeBob and Patrick, I almost said things a little bit more opposite, but whatever. I do apologize for that particular tongue twist in the end, folks, which even then, I did somehow messed up that jump. But don't worry though, because like I said before, it's about the fact that, well, just like the forms of how it does it in Battle for Bikini Bottom, you do have infinite amount of lives, so generally speaking, that's always a huge plus in my book. Although, concerning for the fact that this is a kid's game after all, so you won't be able to come across into something that's a little bit more frustrating, unlike in some other games in the past, or anything else like that, like retro old school days. Although, what's even annoying about this though is about the fact that much like Battle for Bikini Bottom, well, this game still retains the knockback feature, which is unsurprising, especially concerning if we do manage to come across into more enemy encounters, including some of the most annoying enemies in the entire game, which I'll discuss more about that in a future time. So generally speaking, for the most part though, Rock Slide is pretty self-explanatory, and generally speaking, we have to simply try to avoid not only Kaisers, but alongside with that, well, thankfully though, just like the previous slide level that we somehow did earlier, basically though, this stage is very generous when it comes to checkpoints. So, anyways though, and like I said before, it's about the fact that unlike in the movie, where basically though when SpongeBob and Patrick has somehow received the actual mustache thanks to Mindy's mermaid magic, basically though, as soon as when Mindy was trying to convince SpongeBob and Patrick they need to become brave, and generally speaking though, yeah, you get the idea. And after that particular third and final sentence, basically though, both SpongeBob and Patrick responds that because we are invincible. And then for whatever reason they somehow jump off the edge rather than just take the stairs, and they somehow jump off, and then Mindy goes like, I never said that. And that's as far as I can try to remember it anyway. And obviously though, it's about the fact that luckily though, in the movie though, they somehow do not sacrifice themselves, all thanks to that particular green kind of object or something like that. Well, then again though, it has been about quite a few hours ago since I actually have last seen the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, so either way though, yeah, you get the suggestions by that point. So, but yeah, you get the idea what I was expecting to talk about this, and for the sake of time anyway. So anyways though, oh, there's also another thing it's worth mentioning for actually. It's about the fact that there are quite a few titles has been listed, all thanks to this upcoming event, which appears to be the Golden Joystick Awards, which obviously is about the fact that they did somehow so far manage to nominate for about 12 of those games in particular, and for what I thought was a little bit odd is that none of those Nintendo games has been made it to the Golden Joystick Awards. So, generally speaking though, all they got right here is quite a number of titles, ranging from Tekken 8, Helldivers 2, Black Myth, Yao Kong, and there's also the forms of Animal Well, and Balatro, or anything else like that, and Dragon Age, the Volgard, and as well as that, there's also Metapho, Refantazo, or anything else like that. And there's also with the forms of Satisfactory and Astro Bot, Silent Hills 2 Remake, and as well as Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So, yeah, that's all the games have been listed for the nominates for the likes of this particular, well, the Golden Joystick Awards. So, and we're very curious to know about the forms of what's the ultimate Game of the Year reward during that specific catalog for that particular, the Golden Joystick Awards. So, maybe we'll find out probably at some point until specifically on the 21st of November. So, everything else will be possible during that time. So, anyways though, and as far as on the actual subjects, in regards to the forms of Mario Luigi Brothership though, that as far as you probably already know about the fact that the reviews has already been up for that particular game, for the most part, certain reviewers out there, specifically Games Radar, alongside with the forms of SAC News and Eurogamer, luckily enough, did somehow receive the game a pretty good score so far. Like, for instance, Games Radar receives the game a 4 out of 5, like 4 stars out of 5, and same applies to Eurogamer, thankfully. And on top of that, with SAC News, receives the game a 9 out of 10, which is really, really good. And Games Reactor, for some reason, gives the game a 7 out of 10, which is fine enough. But, in comparison to IGN, though, I just gotta say, I'm just pretty much sick and tired of the forms of negativity with IGN review scores nowadays, especially no wonder why, that we somehow refuse able to actually give certain games a score now, but that's just mainly because of my personal preference when it comes to certain games I like, certain games I really do enjoy, and some other games I'm not overly keen on at first glance. So, yeah, because for whatever stupid reason, IGN receives the game a 5 out of 10, and I was like, I got my face slapped whenever I see that score, and I was like, you guys are jerks. Anyway, that'll be a topic for a later time, I guess. So for now, we made it towards the end.
Holy cow! You actually did it?
Of course we did. We're men.
Yeah, right. Here's your reward.
And after that, we get ourselves yet another Goofy Goofer token. So yeah, that's actually super top notch and everything. Now, of course, we can't able to do the time challenge until for later time, because for now, we instantly dive into the next stage, which appears to be, well, ironically enough, now that we are men. Not to be confused as the exact same, little sentence right there as one of those songs they somehow got in the actual movie when they made it towards the, well, the trench and stuff like that. And sure enough though, this place is pure dangerous for not only for certain monsters, but as well as anything else in general. So, yeah, we have to make our way through this particular level as far as I'm aware. And generally speaking, I think, suffice to say, we can able to actually learn the next move specifically for SpongeBob.
Awesome! You have enough Goofy Goober tokens to earn your next ability, the Sponge Bowl.
Oh, that move sounds familiar. That was actually a similar move as in the Battle for Bikini Bottom.
Strike-o-matic! Oh, I forgot my spoon.
No, Sponge Bowl. It's really useful on things you don't want to get too close to. Those nasty bucketheads must be stopped. Shell City is on the other side of this dark, scary place.
Real men aren't afraid of the dark.
You need to get across this trench.
Real men aren't afraid of the trench.
Of course they're not. Just look out for monsters.
Monsters.
And I'm afraid to tell you for this point, guys, I'm basically run out of time for this recording session, so with that being said, we'll probably get up to endings up this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game. Instead, we're going on to the next level, which appears to be Now That We Are Men. So this will be pretty interesting to say the least. So I'll see you guys until our next Monday. Later, fellas.